The grain fields of Nine stretched endlessly under twin suns, golden waves that had fed the people for 3,000 years. Today, massive harvesting machines descended from the sky, their polished surfaces reflecting light like falling stars. The farmers watched in silence as the machines began their work, cutting and collecting every stalk, every seed, leaving nothing but bare earth behind. Executor materialized in the village square, his form shimmering into existence without warning. The knew better than to show surprise. The overlords could appear anywhere, anytime. That was simply how things were. Your contribution is needed elsewhere, said, his voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of authority. A core world experiences shortage. Your grain will save millions. You should take pride in this sacrifice. Elder, whose scales had faded to pale silver with age, stepped forward. His voice shook, but he spoke anyway. Our children will starve. We have nothing else. Regarded the elder with something that might have been sympathy in a younger, less certain being. Provisions will be provided, sufficient for survival. The overlords have maintained galactic peace for 10. Trust in our wisdom. The provisions arrived 3 days later. Exactly enough calories to keep the population alive. Nothing more. Several of the oldest died within a week, their bodies too weak to adjust to the synthetic compounds. The overlords noted this in their records as an acceptable variance. Halfway across the galaxy, Scout Commander reviewed sensor data with growing confusion. His ship had detected energy signatures that shouldn't exist, a species achieving faster-than-light travel without overlord guidance. Impossible, according to every model, yet the readings didn't lie. The system contained a yellow dwarf star, 9 planets, and one world teeming with 7 billion sentient beings. They called themselves humans, and they had just broken the light barrier using principles the overlords had never encountered. Transmitted his findings to the High Council. The response came within minutes. He was to make first contact immediately. The humans would be integrated into galactic civilization according to standard protocols. They would be saved from themselves, lifted up, given their proper place in the cosmic order. The Overlord delegation arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning. Their ships appeared over every major city simultaneously, vast and elegant, making no threatening moves. They simply waited, broadcasting a simple message in every human language. We come in peace. We bring the gift of civilization. President stood in the emergency session of the United Earth Council, her face pale but determined. Around the conference table, leaders from every nation argued, shouted, and pleaded. The overlords had shared glimpses of their technology, medical advances that could end disease, energy systems that could eliminate poverty, star maps showing humanity's place in a galaxy filled with thousands of other species. They're offering us everything we've ever dreamed of, Ambassador said, her hands pressed flat against the table. How can we refuse? By remembering we're human, General replied from her seat in the military section. They're asking us to give up our sovereignty, our right to make our own decisions. They'll control everything. They've maintained peace for 10,000 years, countered. We've barely managed 70 without a world war. Maybe we need guidance. The vote took 3 days. In the end, the decision was close 312 votes to accept integration, 287 against. Ambassador would lead the diplomatic mission. General tendered her resignation that same evening. The integration ceremonies were magnificent. Overlord technology began transforming Earth within hours. Hospitals received medical equipment that could heal injuries in minutes. Power plants were replaced with clean, infinite energy sources. The first human colony ships prepared to depart for new worlds that the overlords had already prepared for habitation. Stood beside Executor at the signing ceremony, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. This is the beginning of a new age for humanity, she said. Yes, agreed, his ancient eyes fixed on something far away. You will be guided, protected. Saved from the chaos that destroys primitive species, you should be grateful." Something in his tone made Smile falter, but the moment passed. The crowds were cheering. Earth was joining the stars. Sarah watched the ceremony on a stolen tablet from a bunker 300 feet below Colorado. Around her, 24 others sat in similar silence. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, all people who had seen something wrong in the Overlord's perfect smile. "They're doing to us what they did to everyone else," Doctor said, her fingers flying over a keyboard. "I've been analyzing the historical data they've shared. 23 species have gone extinct since the Overlords took power. The official records say they destroyed themselves, but look at the pattern." She pulled up graphs on the main screen. Each extinct species had shown signs of rapid advancement before their collapse. Each had been integrated into Overlord civilization 5 to 20 years before their decline began. "They're pruning us," said quietly, "like gardeners cutting back plants that grow too fast." "We can't know that for certain," said former intelligence analyst. "But we also can't ignore the possibility." "So what do we do?" someone asked from the back of the room. "They're immortal. They can predict everything we do before we do it. Their technology is 10,000 years ahead of ours. How do you fight gods?" Stood up, her jaw set. "The same way you fight any enemy, you study them, you find their weaknesses, and you never ever stop trying." On the surface, humanity celebrated its ascension. The Overlords had promised them the stars, and the promises were already coming true. Earth's deserts bloomed with crops grown from alien seeds. The sick were healed. The old were given extended. Poverty began to disappear as Overlord economic systems were implemented. Ambassador toured the new facilities with growing wonder. The medical center could regenerate entire organs. The research station in Geneva had solved fusion power in ways human scientists had thought impossible. Children were being educated in schools that adjusted their teaching to each individual mind. "Is this not better?" asked during one of their regular meetings. "Your people suffered needlessly for so long. Now they thrive." "Yes," admitted. "It's remarkable, but some of our leaders are concerned about the loss of autonomy. We're used to making our own decisions." "Primitive species always resist guidance at first," said not unkindly. "You will adapt. They all do." That phrase haunted for days. They all do. As if humanity was just another specimen being processed, filed away, made to fit a predetermined pattern. Below ground, the resistance was growing. Had established contact with military units across the globe, people who hadn't surrendered their weapons despite Overlord requests. Led a team of scientists analyzing every scrap of Overlord technology they could access. Coordinated intelligence gathering from sources who had managed to infiltrate the integration centers. "They're installing monitors everywhere," reported during a secure meeting. "Not obvious ones. Quantum sensors woven into the fabric of the new buildings. They're watching everything." "Can they see us here?" asked. "Not yet. The old military bunkers use materials that interfere with their scans, but it's only a matter of time." Looked up from her workstation, her face troubled. "I've been studying their predictive algorithms. They're incredible. They can calculate probability chains thousands of moves ahead, but there's something strange about them." "Strange how?" "They're too perfect. They assume rational actors making optimal decisions, but humans aren't always rational. We do stupid things, emotional things, creative things that don't follow logical patterns. I think that might be a weakness." "You're saying our irrationality is an advantage," sounded skeptical. "I'm saying it might be the only advantage we have." 6 months after integration, the first human colony was established on a world the Overlords called Haven 7. 10,000 volunteers arrived to find a paradise, breathable atmosphere, fertile soil, abundant water, and infrastructure already built by automated Overlord systems. The colonists sent back videos of their new home, faces glowing with joy and wonder. Earth celebrated. The overlords had delivered on every promise. Only a few people noticed that the colony's communication systems all routed through overlord servers, that every building included overlord monitoring systems, that the colonists' children were being educated according to curriculum designed by beings who had never been young, never struggled, never failed. In her private quarters, reviewed reports and felt a growing unease she couldn't name. Everything was going well. Humanity was thriving. So why did she feel like she was watching her species fall asleep? She thought about contacting but dismissed the idea. The general had made her choice, had made hers. They were committed to different paths now. Below the surface, resistance continued their work in shadow. They stole data, analyzed patterns, and planned for a war they didn't know how to fight. Each night, reviewed the list of extinct species and wondered if humanity would be the 24th. But she also remembered something her grandmother had told her as a child. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have ended them. They survived because they were stubborn, creative, and too stupid to know when they were beaten. Maybe, thought as she studied maps of overlord facilities, that would be enough. On the surface, Earth transformed. In the shadows, resistance took root, and in the deep void between stars, the overlords watched their acquisition with satisfaction. Humanity was adapting well to guidance. In a generation or two, they would forget they had ever been free. Executor filed his report and marked the human integration as proceeding within acceptable parameters. The species showed some signs of independent thinking, but nothing that couldn't be managed. Nothing that 10,000 years of experience couldn't handle. He had no way of knowing that in a bunker beneath Colorado, a woman who refused to surrender was teaching others to do the same. That in offices across Earth, people were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. That humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their intelligence, but their absolute refusal to accept that anything was inevitable. The overlords had ruled for 10,000 years. They would continue to rule. That was certain. Or so they believed. 5 years passed like a dream. Earth had become something out of humanity's oldest fantasies, a world without hunger, disease, or poverty. Cities floated on anti-gravity platforms that the overlords had installed in months. Humans lived longer, healthier lives. The first generation of children educated under overlord systems were showing remarkable advances in mathematics and science. Ambassador walked through New Shanghai, marveling at the transformation. The city gleamed with crystalline towers that grew taller each month, shaped by construction that worked without rest. Above, ships departed daily for a dozen human colonies, each world carefully prepared and monitored by their benefactors. Your species has adapted remarkably well, Executor said, materializing beside her without warning. Had learned not to flinch at these sudden appearances. We're grateful for everything you've done, she replied and meant it. How could she not? The overlords had delivered miracles. The High Council is pleased with human progress. In another generation, your people will be ready for fuller integration into galactic society. Something in his phrasing caught her attention. Fuller integration. There are responsibilities that come with advancement, explained. Service to the greater galactic community, resource allocation, population management. These things require maturity. What kind of population management? But had already vanished, moving on to his next appointment. Stood alone in the perfect city and felt the first real stab of doubt. Deep underground, Sarah's resistance had grown from 24 to nearly 10,000. They operated in cells, each one isolated, communicating through quantum-encrypted channels that even overlord sensors couldn't penetrate. At least, that's what they hoped. We've got something, announced during an encrypted meeting. I've been analyzing prohibited archives that we recovered from a military AI core. The Overlords didn't know we kept backup systems they couldn't access. On the screen, data scrolled past, centuries of historical records from species long dead, highlighted specific entries, and a pattern emerged that makes blood run cold. 23 extinct species, said, all of them integrated into Overlord civilization, all of them showing signs of rapid advancement before integration, and all of them experienced what the Overlords call managed decline protocols within 20 years of first contact. Define managed decline, said from his station. Population reduction through birth rate manipulation, economic collapse engineered through resource reallocation, key infrastructure failures that coincidentally kill the most innovative members of society. Over 50 years, each species just faded away. The Overlords marked them as failed civilizations that destroyed themselves. But they were murdered, said quietly, systematically eliminated whenever they showed signs of potentially rivaling Overlord technology. The archives are clear. Any species that advances too quickly gets pruned. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was advancing quickly, very quickly. How long do we have? Someone asked. Based on the pattern, maybe 5 more years before they decide we're a threat. On the surface, most of humanity remained blissfully unaware. The Overlords had given them paradise, and few questioned what it cost. Those who did ask uncomfortable questions found themselves gently redirected, offered prestigious positions on colony worlds, or academic opportunities that required them to leave Earth, or medical treatments that left them content and compliant. Began noticing the pattern after a colleague vanished overnight. Dr. Sarah Martinez had been asking questions about Overlord surveillance systems. The next day, she accepted a position on Haven 7, sent a brief message saying she needed a change, and was never heard from again. When tried to follow up, every communication channel failed. When she checked official records, Martinez's file showed a standard transfer with all proper authorizations. Nothing suspicious, nothing to investigate. But couldn't shake the feeling that she just witnessed someone disappear into paradise. She started paying attention to things she'd ignored before. The way Overlord advisors were always present in important meetings. How human leaders increasingly deferred to Overlord judgment on major decisions. The subtle reshaping of education to emphasize compliance and cooperation over innovation and questioning. One night, unable to sleep, she accessed classified files that her ambassadorial position gave her clearance for. She found records of meetings she'd never been told about, discussions of human integration timelines and innovation suppression protocols, references to other species that had been successfully managed. Her hands shook as she read. The Overlords weren't saviors. They were gardeners, and humanity was just another plant that needed to be kept from growing too tall. Thought of, dismissed as a paranoid extremist 5 years ago. She thought of all the certainty she'd felt, all the gratitude, all the times she'd defended the Overlords against criticism. She'd been wrong. The Resistance's first field test came 3 months later. They'd identified an Overlord detention facility where humans who asked too many questions were held in voluntary rehabilitation. 37 people inside, including 2 of former colleagues. The Overlords can predict any planned attack, explained to the 3 rescue teams. Their quantum algorithms calculate probability chains and prepare countermeasures, so we're not going to plan anything. That's insane, one of the team leaders said. Exactly. The Overlord's entire advantage is based on rational behavior. They expect us to act optimally. Instead, we're going to act chaotically. Each team has a general objective: get inside, free prisoners, get out. How you do it is up to you. No coordination. No communication once you're deployed. Just adapt and improvise. It violated every military principle had ever learned, but they were out of conventional options. The teams deployed at different times, using different approaches. Team 1 crashed a stolen cargo truck through the front gates. Team 2 infiltrated through the sewers. Team 3 simply walked in the front door claiming to be volunteers for rehabilitation. The Overlords' defensive systems failed to predict any of it. Their response protocols designed for coordinated attacks faltered against pure chaos. While they calculated optimal responses to Team 1's frontal assault, Team 2 was already inside. While they adjusted to handle the sewer breach, Team 3 had accessed the detention cells. The rescue succeeded with only 2 casualties. 37 confused prisoners were extracted and smuggled to safe houses across the continent. More importantly, the Overlords had been surprised. For the first time in 10,000 years, something had happened that they hadn't predicted. Executor reviewed the incident reports with confusion that slowly turned to concern. The humans had acted irrationally, inefficiently, with no coordination. Yet they'd succeeded. His algorithms showed it should have been impossible. He flagged the incident for deeper analysis and increased surveillance on known resistance members. The human situation was developing outside acceptable parameters. Meanwhile, made her decision. She used her secure ambassadorial channels to send a single encrypted message to an address she'd memorized 5 years ago but never used. "You were right. I have access to classified information. Tell me what you need." The response came within an hour. "Meet me where we first argued about the integration vote." They met in an abandoned subway station that predated the Overlord renovation of New Shanghai. Emerged from the shadows, older and harder than remembered, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "I'm sorry," said. "I should have listened." "You're listening now, that's what matters." Handed her a data pad. "We need information on Overlord facilities, command structures, anything you can access. They're planning something for humanity. We need to know what and when." "I can get you files, but it's risky. They monitor everything." "I know, but we're out of time. According to their own patterns, they should be implementing managed decline protocols soon. Maybe they already have." Thought of Martinez and dozens of others who'd vanished into comfortable positions on distant worlds. "I think they already started." Over the next year, fed intelligence to the resistance while maintaining her public role. She learned to smile at while memorizing the details of his meetings. She attended integration ceremonies while secretly recording every word. She became 2 people, the loyal ambassador and the secret rebel. The resistance expanded beyond Earth, made contact with other species who had survived the Overlord's rule by accepting their place in the hierarchy. Most were too broken to fight, but a few still remembered freedom. An elder named joined them after his world's grain harvest left his people starving. A trader provided ships and weapons in exchange for hope of liberation. They were building an army in shadow, training in chaos, preparing for a war against immortal gods. Then witnessed something that changed everything. She was attending a High Council meeting as Earth's representative, standing silently while the Overlords discussed galactic affairs. A new species called the had been discovered, brilliant biotechnologists who had achieved remarkable advances in genetic engineering within just decades of integration. "They're advancing too quickly," one council member observed. "The projections show they could rival our biotechnology within 3 centuries. "Unacceptable," another agreed. "Recommend implementation of managed decline protocols, standard 50-year timeline." "Approved," said without emotion. "Begin population reduction measures immediately. Target the most innovative individuals for removal." Stood frozen, listening to them discuss genocide with the clinical detachment of accountants balancing books. When the meeting ended, she went directly to a secure location and vomited until her stomach was empty. That night, she sent everything. Every file, every meeting record, every piece of evidence that proved the Overlords were not saviors but executioners who killed with paperwork and patience. "We need to go public," said in their next meeting. "The galaxy needs to know what they are. If we reveal this, they'll implement our decline immediately," warned. "We'll be fighting for our survival within days." "We're already fighting for our survival. We've been fighting since the moment they arrived. We just didn't know it," studied the ambassador who'd once argued passionately for integration. "Are you ready for war?" "I'm ready for freedom, whatever that costs." They made the decision together. In 3 days would leak everything to every network in the galaxy simultaneously. The Overlords would know humanity had discovered the truth. There would be no going back. Returned to the underground and began final preparations. They had one shot at this. If they failed, humanity would join the list of extinct species. But Sarah had learned something important over the past 5 years. Humans were very good at doing impossible things when you told them they couldn't. The Overlords were about to learn that lesson themselves. The truth hit the galactic networks at 400 Earth Standard Time. Had waited until most of Earth's population was asleep, but she'd timed it perfectly for peak activity on 50 other worlds. The files uploaded everywhere simultaneously: Overlord surveillance records, meeting transcripts, the complete list of extinct species with detailed reports on how each one had been eliminated. Humanity woke up to discover their saviors were executioners. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Riots broke out in New Shanghai, New York, and colony worlds cut communication with Overlord administrators. The United Earth Council demanded emergency sessions. People who'd been grateful 5 hours ago were now screaming for blood. Ambassador broadcast a final message before going dark. She appeared on screens across the galaxy, her face calm despite the storm she'd unleashed. "For 5 years I believed the Overlords had saved us. I was wrong. They were preparing us for extinction the same way they've eliminated 23 other species. They call it managed decline. I call it murder." She paused, letting that sink in. "But here's what they didn't expect. Humans don't accept inevitability. We've been preparing for this moment. And we're going to show every enslaved species in this galaxy something they've forgotten: how to fight back. They can be beaten. We'll show you how." The broadcast ended, pulled the data core from her terminal, destroyed it, and vanished into the underground network that had spent years building. On the Overlord command ship above Earth, Executor watched the chaos spreading across his monitors with something close to disbelief. The humans had exposed everything. Worse, they seemed proud of it. They were celebrating their own death sentence. "Implement managed decline protocols immediately," he ordered. "Full measures, 30-year timeline compressed to 5 years. Target all resistance members, anyone with advanced education, anyone showing innovative tendencies." "Sir, that will kill approximately 2 billion humans," his second-in-command warned. "Then it will kill 2 billion humans. The species has proven itself incompatible with galactic order. Begin operations now." But as issued orders, something unprecedented happened. The commands didn't execute. Overlord systems across Earth began reporting errors. Surveillance networks failed. Predictive algorithms returned nonsensical results. Communication systems routed to wrong destinations. In the deepest bunker beneath Colorado, Doctor smiled as her screens showed chaos spreading through Overlord infrastructure. "The virus is active," she reported. "Every system they have is now infected with weaponized uncertainty. Their perfect predictions are giving them random noise. Their immortality technology is malfunctioning. Their coordination is collapsing." "How long will it last?" asked. "Long enough, maybe an hour, maybe a day, but it'll give us a window. Then we use it." The plan was insane, which made it perfect. While Overlord systems failed across Earth, 50 human strike teams launched simultaneous attacks on critical infrastructure. They didn't coordinate. didn't communicate. Each team acted independently, using chaos as their weapon. Team 7 seized an Overlord communication hub and broadcast resistance messages. Team 15 destroyed a surveillance center. Team 23 freed prisoners from a detention facility, filmed it, and uploaded the footage to every network they could find. The Overlords couldn't predict any of it. Their algorithms kept trying to calculate optimal responses, but the quantum virus fed them corrupted data. By the time they figured out what one team was doing, 5 other teams had already completed different missions. But the real strike was happening elsewhere. Led a team of 50 humans toward the dimensional nexus, the Overlord's central hub that existed partially outside normal spacetime. It was the heart of their entire network, protected by physics that made approach impossible. The Overlords had designed it to be absolutely secure. They'd assumed their enemies would act rationally. The approach to the Nexus required passing through dimensional barriers that disintegrated matter at the quantum level. The Overlord's own ships could only transit safely because they followed precise mathematical paths calculated to avoid the barriers. His team didn't calculate anything. They flew by instinct, each pilot making split-second decisions based on nothing but gut feeling and reflexes. When sensors showed a barrier ahead, they didn't plot a course around it. They just turned randomly and hoped. 7 ships were destroyed in the approach, 13 more during the insertion into the Nexus itself. The dimensional barriers caught them like flies in a web, pulling them apart at the atomic level. But 30 ships made it through. 30 ships crewed by humans who decided that dying free was better than living as pets. The Nexus interior was vast and beautiful, crystalline structures floating in space that wasn't quite space, connected by bridges of pure mathematics. Overlord defenders materialized immediately, but their weapons kept missing targets as the quantum virus corrupted their targeting systems. His team fought through using weapons that shouldn't work in dimensional space, but did anyway because humans had never learned what was impossible. They lost 23 more people in the corridors of the Nexus. 23 more names for the list of people who died for freedom. Reached the central core with 7 others. The Overlords guarded it personally, 5 immortals who'd lived for thousands of years, who'd shaped galactic civilization, who'd never known defeat. They died in 7 minutes. Turns out immortality technology doesn't work well when it's been infected with weaponized chaos. Turns out thousands of years of experience fighting predictable enemies doesn't help when facing people acting on pure adrenaline and desperation. Uploaded the final stage of the virus directly into the core. The effect was total and immediate. Every Overlord system in the galaxy began failing simultaneously. The dimensional network collapsed. Surveillance grids went dark. Predictive algorithms crashed. Immortality treatment stopped working. For 10,000 years, the Overlords had been perfect, immortal, and certain of everything. In 7 minutes, humanity had made them mortal, vulnerable, and lost. His team tried to escape, but the Nexus was collapsing around them. The dimensional barriers were destabilizing without Overlord systems to maintain them. She sent a final message. Virus deployed successfully. Don't waste what we bought you. Then the barriers caught her ship, and she joined the 23 others who died in the attack. Across the galaxy, species that had been suppressed suddenly found themselves free. Overlord garrisons went silent. Command networks failed. The immortal rulers who'd seemed invincible just hours ago were suddenly mortal and powerless. Some species sought immediate vengeance. Others simply celebrated. A few tried to restore the Overlords to power, terrified of freedom after so many generations of control. On Earth, Executor found himself trapped in his failing ship with nowhere to go. His communication systems were dead. His immortality treatment had failed. For the first time in 4,000 years, he could feel his body beginning to age. He made his way to the surface, and found Sarah waiting in the ruins of what had been an Overlord command center. "Why?" he asked, genuinely confused. "We gave you everything: paradise, peace, freedom from suffering." "Freedom from suffering," laughed bitterly. "You gave us a comfortable prison. You were going to let most of us live long enough to forget we'd ever been free, then kill off the rest of us because we had the audacity to be creative. We maintained order, peace, 10,000 years without galactic war. You maintained a graveyard. You were so powerful that you forgot how to actually live. You eliminated every challenge, every struggle, every opportunity for growth. You didn't create peace, you created stagnation. And then you killed anyone who threatened to disturb it. Looked at the human who destroyed his civilization and saw something he hadn't recognized before. Not a primitive species that needed guidance. Not a threat to be eliminated, but a force of nature that couldn't be controlled or predicted. "What will you do now?" he asked. "The galaxy is in chaos. Billions depend on Overlord infrastructure. You've doomed as many as you've freed." "Maybe, probably, but at least it'll be our choice what happens next. We'll figure it out. We'll make mistakes. Some of us will succeed, some will fail, and some will die trying. But it'll be ours." Turned to leave, then stopped. "You asked why we fought. You really want to know, because anything we don't build ourselves isn't worth having. You can't give someone freedom. They have to take it." Watched her walk away into the ruins of a burning city and understood, finally, what had defeated his people. The Overlords had spent 10,000 years eliminating uncertainty. Humanity had weaponized it. 5 years later, Ambassador stood at the dedication of a monument on Earth. A simple stone bearing 50 names, the humans who died in the dimensional nexus. Below their names, an inscription: "They gave us back our future by refusing to accept someone else's." The galaxy was messy now, dangerous. Dozens of species were finding their own paths, making their own mistakes, building their own futures. Some of those futures would be beautiful, some would be tragic, but they'd all be earned. A few Overlords still lived, mortal now and stripped of their technology. Some sought revenge. Some tried to rebuild their power. But a few, had learned something from their defeat. He'd taken a position as a teacher on Haven 7, helping young humans understand galactic history. "Do you regret it?" a student asked him one day. "Losing everything?" Thought about 4,000 years of immortality, of absolute power, of perfect certainty about everything. Then he thought about the uncertainty of tomorrow, the possibility that he might fail or succeed based on his own choices rather than predetermined algorithms. "No," he said, and meant it. "I was alive for 4,000 years, but I wasn't living. You humans taught me the difference." On Earth, reviewed reports from across the galaxy. Some species were thriving, others were struggling. They had reclaimed their grain fields and were growing food on their own terms. They were trading freely instead of through Overlord intermediaries. They were advancing their biotechnology without fear of extinction. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't paradise, but it was real. Visited her office one evening with news. "We're getting requests from dozens of species. They want to learn how we did it, how we fought the Overlords, how we weaponized chaos." What do we tell them? The truth, that there's no perfect formula, no guaranteed method. Fighting for freedom means accepting uncertainty, embracing chaos, and being willing to fail. Looked out over Earth, still from the fighting but rebuilding on its own terms. Think they can handle it? They're going to have to. The Overlord's era is over. Now comes the hard part, figuring out what comes next. Across the galaxy, thousands of species faced uncertain futures for the first time in 10,000 years. Some would build wonders. Some would make mistakes. Some would fail spectacularly. But for the first time the future wasn't predetermined. The Overlords had believed that order, control, and certainty were the highest virtues. They'd created a perfect society where nothing unexpected could ever happen. Humanity had taught the galaxy a different lesson. That imperfection was beautiful, that chaos was creative, that the only thing worse than an uncertain future was a certain one. The Overlords' era had ended not with conquest or destruction, but with something far more human: the stubborn, irrational, beautiful refusal to accept that anything was inevitable. And across the stars, species that had forgotten how to hope began remembering how to dream.